Volatility has definitely picked up. Um, Actually, the volatility in bond markets is almost non-existent, which is kind of shocking. The only bond market worldwide that is actually declining and declining hard is the Japanese bond market. The yields in Japan have gone. We're almost at 350 now on a 30-year bond. That's up from 0.75. And the reason I bring this up is because
yeah, they were defending 0 or 0.25 or 0.75 as lines in the sand for a long time there until they just couldn't hold it anymore. Explain more to people what, if you would, what the impact and the importance of that is.
Well, the impact is that's part of the Japanese carry trade. And the carry trade is what was used to reflate the entire system. They've, hundreds of billions, if not several trillion, have been funded through the carry trade. And the problem with that is you're borrowing in yen. So you're borrowing in yen, and the cost to pay that back is increasing because the interest rate's going up, and so is the yen itself. So that is part of what has kicked all this off, is that there's fear that that carry trade is going to break and that funding is going to be reversed. You're seeing big volatility in the metals finally after all these years because the supplies have dwindled. There was supply fears earlier in the 2025 about gold, and obviously the last quarter, all you hear is new sources of demand, and that's coupled with supply problems such as Japan or such as China is not going to be shipping or exporting silver after January 1st. So that tightens a market that's already extremely tight. Get used to the volatility, folks, because what you're seeing now is only going to get larger. We're going to have more and more and more volatility until such day that the paper markets become irrelevant. And you will still see volatility after that, but in the physical markets, it's that what you're watching here is the paper markets on a road to irrelevance.
That demand for physical off-taking from the major exchanges, physical accumulation and repatriation by countries around the world, countries putting silver on their critical materials lists. It seems like carving up the world, quickly taking positions. It's like the end of a game of musical chairs where the music has stopped and everybody's scrambling to make sure they've got theirs. Can you talk to us about that big picture, kind of the global picture of countries, all of this getting very real and very physical all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's not just exchanges. It's sovereign treasuries, sovereign central banks that are stepping up, primarily buying gold, although I believe India and China are both buying silver. But it just makes sense what they're doing is onboarding gold onto their balance sheet, because we live in a system that is going into bankruptcy, going into insolvency. And these central banks are worried if they hold too many dollars and no gold, and there's a dollar problem, a credit problem in the United States, and the dollar gets smoked as far as purchasing power, then where does that central bank stand if they don't have gold? So what they're doing is they're unloading gold that will rise in value to fill up the holes, if you will, that are created by a dollar devaluation.
Just to clarify, you said they're onboarding gold, not unloading.
Right, they're buying gold. Yeah, they're buying gold and having it delivered to them, to their country. In the past, what have we seen? We saw 4 years ago, 5 years ago, $1 billion, which is now well more than $2 billion, of Venezuelan gold was basically sequestered by the LBMA, by London. We saw in October of 2022, I'm sorry, October 2023, we saw the Biden administration sequester over $300 billion of Russian U.S. treasuries that they held. The only problem is they didn't really hold them. I mean, that they got shut off from that. So countries are seeing that they're being attacked and shut off in the SWIFT system. So their way around that is to buy the universal money, and I say money, not currency, gold that cannot default. It can't bankrupt. If it's in your possession or in a country's possession, they can't be shut off from the world trade because they have capital. Whereas if they are just in the SWIFT system and have no gold whatsoever, they can be shut off. And I caution listeners that this is exactly what's going to happen when we go to central bank digital currency. If you say the things you and I talk about, Dunnigan, and we're in a central bank digital currency system, you're going to be shut up. There's no beans and tortillas for you tonight.
This isn't just conjecture. We've seen this social credit system in action in China for the last several years. And we saw a foretaste of that during the lockdowns that we all lived through over the past 4 years in terms of people who spoke out being deplatformed and shadow banned and contradicted, and you couldn't re-forward their posts and things like that. So the connection between freedom of speech. We also had Australian economist John Adams, who has been on our channel multiple times from adameconomics.com, receiving a phone call from the authorities saying that because his preschool daughter in her preschool had been exposed, she was deemed to be a contact or near contact event with someone with a certain illness, that their entire family was going to be basically under house arrest. They could go in their backyard, but not in their front yard until further notice, and could not otherwise leave their home and go out into the community. So these examples of authoritarian crackdown on individuals for infractions of either speech, thought, or even in proximity to who you associate with, we've already seen this play out. This isn't theoretical. Any further comments from you on that in the financial realm?
No, well, I mean, that all has to do with trust. And I mean, we can get into that if you want. The bottom line is, without trust, without confidence, the credit systems will unravel. They won't work. Credit won't be forthcoming. And that's something I've talked about for many years now, that this would be a credit event in the end. And when credit breaks, everything stops. Just commenting on that Australian situation, they've got that problem because they gave up their guns. We have a Second Amendment here in the United States, and if somebody told me I could only go in my backyard, you could bet within 5 minutes I'd go take a piss in my front yard.
Well, then they'd have something else to complain to you about rather than what your original infraction was. Bill, you watch these markets.
Indecent exposure on my own property.
You watch these markets closely and have for some time. Talk to us about the physical availability for retail investors at that scale. For retail investors, you deal with this every day. What are you seeing both in terms of immediate availability of products across dealers, and also looking forward as far as the physical availability of investable gold and silver? Because we hear that, and platinum, we hear questions on this every day from clients, and I would like to get your perspective on what you've seen in the past and how this echoes things we've been through recently.
Sure. For gold, it looks like the availability is fine. Then this is just for retail, I'm not talking institutional trades. Silver, there is tightness, but it looks, we do have pretty much most products. You can see amongst the other dealers, premiums have definitely jumped in the last week to 10 days. And it started a week ago, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And you saw some of the bigger dealers raise their premiums. And it's my view, and I mean, I don't have anything to back this up, factually with, but it's my opinion, that these dealers are thinking to themselves, because I've thought the same thing, that supply is going to evaporate. We saw that in April of 2023, where we went into a weekend on a Friday, the 3 banks closed, and by Monday there was nothing to be had. We could only take orders with 6-week projected delivery times. Now, I can tell you that delivery times have expanded now just because there are so many orders coming in, but at this point the supply still is available, and like I said, premiums have definitely turned and are moving higher.
That week and a half ago, event that we saw around Christmas was we had the Friday where silver started out in the low 70s and ended up the day 79.25, and then in the evening markets, overnight markets in Asia, it was up at 84.5 and so on. It opened up then Monday morning back in the US, back around 71, 70, and it's been fighting its way back up since then. Now today we're back up in the 80s. What are you seeing as far as the drivers of this extreme volatility?
Well, I think I would just say it's the smell of blood in the water. You know, people are understanding that supply is tight. People are understanding that demand has definitely overwhelmed supply. So they know the supply-demand situation, and people are when you tell a human being that they can't have something, they want it even more. And that's what's happening, is that there's fear out there that there's not going to be product. And I've also said this for many years. When this thing goes down, you're either in precious metals or you're out. If you're out, you're not going to be afforded the chance to stack and put a position together, because none will be available for sale for whatever amount of fiat you want to pay.
In fact, you mentioned that at the individual level, that's human nature you're describing, is that if you're concerned that you can't get something, you want it all the more, because you realize, I mean, we live not as islands unto ourselves. We live as part of a community, and there's the herd instincts that we have, and who knows how many millions of years of understanding that if everybody wants something at the same time, you better get yours first, or you better get it early if you're going to get it at all. And you're mentioning that that's also happening at the dealership level, when dealers look at their dwindling supply of on-the-shelf physical stock of inventory, and they realize, once this is gone, what am I going to have to sell? Am I going to get my shipments in, my allotments from the U.S. Mint, who's notoriously under producing 30% of the demand every year? Or are we going to get those shipments from overseas? Are there going to be interruptions in availability? Some of that stuff getting redirected into industrial or other demand or considered strategic materials, so these countries aren't going to let it out the door. Can you talk to us about those very real concerns that dealers may be having about where their inventory is going to be coming from in replenishment costs?
Well, yeah, obviously dealers are worried. Am I going to get my shipment? Am I going to get the whole shipment, only part of the shipment? I mean, it's pretty hard to take future orders against a shipment that you don't know is going to be a full shipment, or even if it's going to arrive. So, dealers are pulling back, raising the premiums, and thinking, okay, if we don't get any more, at least we're going to get paid on what we're selling now. Well, I mean, and done again, up until a week and a half ago, if you noticed, all the dealers were really fighting on price. It was all the dealers, especially in silver, all the dealers were marking down the premiums to the point where, they were very, very skinny trades for the dealers. That has turned 180 degrees. And it's not surprising, because dealers are not machines. Dealers are people too. Oh, and let me make one other, let me just mention one other thing. A lot of people know that I did a very large trade a little over 3 years ago. It was a $50 million trade that cleaned up every Silver Eagle, every bag of junk, and pretty much every single pre-1933 gold, Liberty, or St. Gaudens. And that was just with $50 million. That was 3.5 years ago. That was before the SVB bank problems, before that cleared the shelves. What I'm getting at is if a $50 million order came in today, and that is a paltry amount of money. Understand that in today's world, $50 million is nothing. But if you had a $50 million trade that said, I want to buy every U.S. Silver coin and every U.S. Pre-1933 coin, gold coin, I don't think that order could be done today. I think it would wipe the shelves clean, and it would probably affect a lot more than what it did 3 years ago, because the supply and demand equation now is just so razor thin.
This is what I was going to get to next, was not only our inventory is thin, but the idea that people have had of, gee, they want to ride the wave of the high-flying tech stocks and crypto and so on until it looks like that wave is really over, and then they'll consider seeking safety in precious metals. But what you're pointing out, if I'm hearing you right, is that by the time people decide, even at the high end of the food chain, yeah, I'm pretty sure and convinced that now we're topping on both the stock markets and the crypto markets and the other momentum areas that have been having some pretty strong tailwinds, partly fueled by the Japan carry trade, as you brought up right in the beginning. By the time that is evident, good luck finding availability of the shelter metals, the safe harbor metals. Go ahead. What do you have on that?
Yeah, it's too late at that point. And if you're 1 second too late, it's the rest of your life. I mean, if you miss the window to be sitting on some gold and silver when the paper system collapses, that's the rest of your life. There's no way for you to recoup. You either protect your capital now or you're not going to have any capital.
This kind of urgency of decisive action is partly the awareness, the raised awareness of that is starting to spread, I think, among those who've been paying attention in our audience. Most people still haven't been paying attention. 99 whatever percent, Rick Rule says less than 0.5% of all investable assets in the U.S. are in either precious metals or related equities. Still, despite everything that's happened in the past 3 to 4 years to give people a chance to wake up. But just recently, as of that same Christmas week we were talking about, we did an interview on the day before Christmas Eve, so December 23rd, and we were talking with Ed Steer, a member of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. He was talking about the war. The silver was demonstrating against resistance at $71, and by the time we could post that, right after Christmas, we were up at that 79.5, and people were saying that some of the comments were, boy, Liberty and Finance, you got to get with the program. Things are too volatile around here for you to be holding on to stuff for a few days. And despite that it was Christmas Eve and Christmas Day that we didn't post it on. So when people start getting anxious for updates and information, and they want timely information faster than a couple of days, even when some of those are market close days, it's another indication that those who are paying attention are realizing that things are moving fast and there's a lot of volatility. In the face of that, there's a more intense desire on the part of our audience to get frequent and accurate updates. You were describing a phenomenon, we've been discussing this for about a week or two, of AI-generated channels that are scouring the internet for commentary, distilling it, and then presenting it in a repackaged form for consumption. So people are getting, there's one group of channels called The Asian Guy and Related, where it's AI-generated character. It's not even a human that's talking, but they're distilling information from Bill Holter, from Andy Schechtman, from a number of our other guests, and presenting it in summary form. Any comments from you on the benefits and the pitfalls of this new type of rapid, almost instantaneous repackaging and dissemination of information from the standpoint of the well-intended and legitimate needs of the public to be informed?
Yeah, I posted a couple of those AI videos a couple weeks before Christmas, and then the week before Christmas. They're putting it out on. There's got to be 50 different channels, and they're actually just flooding the space. And when I posted the both of those videos, I cautioned readers that the logic is correct, but a lot of the numbers, a lot of the dates are not correct. One of the big not correct numbers was the amount of the amount of registered inventory on COMEX. He said was 41 million ounces, and I think the real number was 107 or 115 million ounces. So while they're talking about the lack of silver to deliver, that number was not factual. That number was wrong. Some of the dates are wrong. 2 days ago, some people sent me one of the latest Asian guy videos that came out, and they said, "This is you. This is you." I'm like, "What do you mean this is you?" They said, "Well, you're mentioned like 3 or 4 times. Bill Holter says." So I watched the interview, and all the words that came out of the bot's mouth, or the Asian guy's mouth, all of those words, every one of them have already come out of my mouth. I watched it twice. I didn't see anything in there that I disagree with because it was from me. Does it mean it's right? I hope so. I think so. But I think, my logic is sound. We are where we are now. And I talked about these things 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. I talk about failure to deliver. I talk about societal breakdown, the rule of law. I mean, you name it. I've talked about all these things over time. And I posted this on my website, and I'm going to leave it up top of my website probably for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. I don't know. Simply because it is 100% my thought process, 100% my logic, given in a calm manner and easy to understand, but it wraps up pretty much everything. I mean, there's others, side issues, but it wraps up the main issues the way I see them. So if you watch, if you go to my website, you watch that video, Bill Holter said that.
The challenge that a lot of our viewers are reporting to us about this is that sometimes the claims made by these AI channels, including the one that you're describing, are portions of fact. So there's nuggets of truth in there, and then there's some conjecture or some just flat out inaccuracies, and it's all wrapped up, but it's all stated so emphatically and so definitively that it sounds compelling. David Morgan, the silver guru, who's been around at this as long as anyone, did a rather detailed dissection and dissemination and debunking of some of the claims that came out from that channel about 3 weeks ago, talking about proof that that there's this secret threshold that was breached at the COMEX, and it's going to cause the demise of these big bullion banks on these certain timeline. And this date, this is going to happen. And this date, this is going to happen. And this date, this is going to happen. And I had multiple clients calling me up and saying, "Dunnigan, do I need to sell all my silver? Dunnigan, do I need to what do I need to do? Because this is happening. This is happening." And just to be cautionary to people to realize that, have you ever done an AI search or have you seen an AI summary of a text, AI summary of a voicemail, AI summary of an email, and realized it may have come up with the exact opposite and wrong conclusion? No, you didn't get the job, or your test says the doctor says your test is fatal or whatever, and you read the thing. That's not what it says. So you have to be very careful when you're just taking AI summaries of anything at face value. You've got to look below the covers, which isn't easy necessarily, but please be very cautious when you're leaping to action based on some AI summary, no matter whether it's saying some of the stuff that Bill Holter would have said, or whether it's saying stuff that was summarized by some other web search you're doing or whatever. Comments from you on the caution necessary, or some reasonable, well, what's an ordinary person supposed to do when faced with these AI summaries?
Right. It's difficult because sometimes you hear something and you don't even know that you should check it out. But yeah, you should try to authenticate what you can. Like I said, a lot of the dates were were wrong. There were numbers, there were amounts that were wrong. And I mean, I know that because I'm in the business, but the average person out there doesn't know that. All I will say, though, is what they're trying to get across is what's happening. Now, is there a failure? Is there only 41 million ounces, and is there going to be a failure to deliver this month? No, there's more than 41 million ounces. There still may be a failure to deliver, but what they're pointing out are the problems. They're making some of the problems bigger than they really are, but collectively, their logic is spot on. Collectively, the logic of a failure to deliver it's 100%.
As people consider their next steps, how do you remind people to yes, be definitive, be proactive, take reasonable and effective action, but not to be rash, not to be jumping at shadows here as they move forward? We certainly are in volatile times. Big things are really happening. A lot of what's been developing for decades is now coming to fruition, coming to a head. But what advice do you give clients who are considering the size or the measured way in which they should make a move? Do you talk to them about doing things in all at once, or in steps, or in tranches, or having a plan?
Well, first off, I do want to say that the worst time to make a decision is when you're under duress. When things are crazy and you've got to make a decision, hopefully you've thought about that decision ahead of time. For instance, and I did want to say about the AI guy, that when there's a headline that says sell your silver, they're talking about paper silver. They're not talking about physical silver. So they are making a definitive line between paper silver and physical silver. So, and I got some of the same calls you got done again. Oh my God, the guy says sell everything. It's going to zero. Well, yeah, the paper contracts could very well go to zero, but the metal can't. As far as let's use a real-time decision to make. And I've had 2 or 3 calls just this morning on it. People are calling, when should I start thinking about swapping some of my silver into gold? Well, you want to think about that ahead of time. I've recommended, and it won't be wrong, but it certainly won't be right. I've recommended that people do it in tranches. You pick a number that you think that the ratio is going to go down to. Do you think it's going to bottom out at 40? You think it's going to bottom out at 30, 20? I think we're going to end up at 20, 25. That's just my gut feel. And I've told people, figure out what you want as your final gold to silver ratio. And you should be much, much heavier in silver right now. And as that ratio, it's now 55-1, down from 120-1. So from that point, silver has doubled the performance of gold. Now, when we get under 50, do you want to sell a tranche? I recommend you do 4 tranches. My thought process is at 50, you sell a tranche and you buy gold. At 40-1, you sell another tranche and you buy gold. At 30, you do one more quarter tranche, and then the last one you do by your gut. And that should get you very close to what you want to be. You want to be 80% gold, 20% silver, 70-30, 90-10, whatever your decision is. Do that math and figure out if you sell, if you sell a quarter and a quarter and a quarter, 4 quarters, then you're going to get to your number. But you've already thought about it ahead of time. You're not freaking out, oh my God, silver's up $13 today. Should I buy it or should I sell it? Because those are the things that are going to be going through your mind. You've already thought about it. You've already made your plan to do a swap from silver to gold at these ratio numbers. Just follow through. And when I said, and I certainly won't be right, I'm not going to pick the bottom number. There's no way, because I'm doing it in 4 tranches. But I'm certainly not going to get beat and totally miss it.